No? All right. Well, I would like to introduce our first speaker. He sits like 30 feet away from me every day. It's pretty amazing. His name's Marty, and he's going to talk about gravity flow. Give it up.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, so hi, bright light. I'm Marty Kokes. I'm a web developer here at Sambura, and do a lot with WordPress and stuff. And I don't know, a couple months ago, we started messing around with this plugin called Gravity Flow. And I thought it was neat at the time, but didn't really think of any immediate uses. But the more and more I use it, the more and more I keep finding situations where it is really going to kind of go through that. So I'll put this up again after the talk's over, but here's where to follow me and all that stuff. And all these slides are going to be available afterwards. And I threw together a little functionality plugin that I'm going to use in the upcoming demo that you can also grab if you want. So Gravity Forms, I'm sure most of you are pretty familiar with Gravity Forms. It's probably the most ubiquitous form building plugin out there for WordPress. Makes building really complicated forms super easy. So Gravity Flow is a side project of one of the developers at Rocket Genius, the makers of Gravity Forms. And so, I don't know, I have a good feeling that he knows what he's doing, I guess. And what it does is it allows you to build workflow steps around your Gravity Forms. So you can do some pretty complex stuff with the Gravity Form, but in terms of building a workflow around it, you pretty much just get the one step. You can do a lot within a form using like conditional logic and that kind of stuff, but in most cases, we're going to have a form, it's going to get submitted, and then we're maybe going to trigger a notification or two or something off of it. So here's kind of a sample scenario of something you could do with Gravity Flow. You could have a form submission, and then you could fire off a confirmation notification to the submitter of that application, and then it can move on to like an approval step where it's assigned to somebody, and then they can approve or deny the request. If it's denied, we could send a rejection letter to the original submitter. We could, instead of approving or rejecting the form, we could revert it to, or we could prompt the original submitter for more information or to change some information on the form. And then they could resubmit it, and it would go through that approval process again. And as many times as necessary, we could kind of build a little feedback loop around that. And once it was approved, we can fire off another additional notification. So let's see, I've got a little demo. Hot dogs. So before I get too into it, there's a couple tools that come in handy. I don't know what most of you do for your local development environments, but I use this. It used to be called Pressmatic. Now it's called Local by Flywheel. But basically, it allows you to, it's kind of like a MAMP set up on steroids. It lets you spin up WordPress sites with just a click of a button. But what's really handy for this or testing anything that has notifications, is it has this built-in tool called Mail Catcher, which it looks like this. So any mail that's going out of the system, it's going to get snagged by this. It actually never gets sent, but it allows you to view everything, like where it was, who it was going to, and any that. Let's see, plugins. And user switching, since we're going to be dealing with multiple users submitting and approving forms, the user switching plugin is really handy. It allows you to, I'll just go into users. So right now I'm logged in as Marty, destroyer of snacks, Kokes. And say I wanted to log in as Nick. I could just switch over to him like this, and now I'm using the site as Nick would do it. So if you're testing out a workflow and you want to pretend like, oh, I'm person A and I need to approve this, and then switch back and be person B without having to log in and log out of a bunch of different accounts, it makes it really handy.
That's super useful for any sort of workflow where you have multiple roles.
Yeah. So, I don't know, we're pretty fanatical about our snacks around here, or our snack supply. And let's see, Nick is kind of the gatekeeper of the snacks, and we have to. Yeah. So generally, we have a running list of when we're getting low on something or when we need more of something else or whatever. And so I decided to throw together a quick demo of like a snack ordering approval workflow. So to start things off, we've got our gravity form. And it's pretty basic. We're just going to pick a type of snack, just a simple drop-down deal. What specifically do we want, and how much of this snack do we want? And that's the gravity form. So now where gravity flow comes into play is we'll go to settings and then workflow. And so I've got a bunch of steps already in here, but essentially how this works is when you submit your gravity form, it's going to start at the top of the list of the workflow steps and work its way down. And you can just add workflow steps in here. And by default, you get a couple different step types. So you can have an approval step where somebody is going to approve, or they're going to review the information, and they're either going to approve, reject, or revert it to a different step. I'll get into the details more in a little bit. Notification, any type of notification, whether it's, so by default on the gravity form, you have the notification built in to the gravity form. So when it's submitted, it'll fire off the an admin notification by default, and then if you want to add more, you can do that. But what I generally try to do, just to keep it a little bit, or make it a little bit easier to visualize, is I turn off the gravity form notifications, and I do everything within Gravity Flow. And user input. This would be if a form was, you could use it to construct like a feedback loop where you require additional information from the submitter, or if a different party at a later point in the workflow needs to add some input into it. That's what this would be used for. Outgoing Webhook. So, and this basically allows you to fire off a HTTP request to a RESTful API of some sort. Yeah. So, like, I don't know if Amazon has a API, but yeah, that would be cool. So, and it's also open, so you can make your own custom step types. And there's also, so like, I have one here. So after we submit this snack request form and it's approved and it's gone through all the works and everything, we're going to create it as a post type. So kind of build a shopping list. But let's see. So Gravity Flow has a couple custom extensions you can add in there. And these will all manifest themselves as workflow steps. Okay, so let's see. I'm just going to go ahead and do one of these. So I want to get, I'm logged in as Marty right now, and when I submit this, it's going to go to Nick for approval. So I'm going to get some chips. I would like some Doritos. And, I don't know, 2 tons. So I submit it. I get, thanks for submitting your snack request. It'll be reviewed, and you'll be notified if additional adjustments are required. So we can look over here in Mail Catcher. And so I can see that I was notified that I successfully submitted my form by email. And then Nick received an email for his snack request. And so you can click on here. Or, let me see. I'll have to switch to Nick so that I can approve it. So this is made, you can access these workflow steps from a couple different spots. You can have it so there is an inbox on the front end of the form. So you don't even need to log in to get to this stuff, but you can pretty much do everything from the back end too. So when I go into Nick's inbox, I see a form was submitted. Click in there. And I am going to say, nope, many Doritos. And I don't want to flat out reject it. I'm just going to revert it. And that will go, that will take the process and move it back to a user input step. So let's see. Yep, so I got another mail. Let's see. That's not right. Ideally, I'd want one that would then go to Marty. Yeah, so that I know that I need to make a change.
You control all that, right?
Yep, yeah. So let's see. Switch back to Marty. What's that? No, that mail catcher is separate. It's just anything going in or out of the WordPress environment I'm going to see. Yeah. Ruh-roh. Let's take another look at this and see where it's at. So if I go to status, I see everything in here. Oh, did I not hit? Oh, okay. So let's see. I don't know. I'll switch back to Nick. Go to my inbox. Okay, so let's see, did we get same as what it did before? Okay. Oh, so what this is right here is if I wanted to manually force it to go to a specific step or just restart the whole process. Well, let's dig into this and see what's going on here. So if I go back into my form, go into the workflow, I can see first thing that happens is I submit it, notification gets sent out. Then the next step after this is I skip over the user input step and I go to the approval step. So this is one thing that's kind of deceiving about this. You just get a big long list of all your steps, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the path through there is linear. You could have a couple different branches in here. Okay, revert to user input step, snack adjustment. Mm-hmm. Yep. So when I hit revert, what it should do is go to here. Yeah. So by default, when I submit my form, notifies, then it skips this one, goes to the reviewal. If it's reverted, goes back to snack adjustments, and then we can have a feedback loop here. And then if it's approved, we're going to add it to the snack post and the stopgap test. I usually throw an approval step at the end just to keep the workflow from completing. But let's see. Well, ready to step user input. Yeah.
Maybe it's going to that spot and it's saying to go to the same distance.
Sure. Forms. Oh, so this should get, it's not being assigned to anybody. So they can't change it. So I want to assign it to the person that submitted the form. So I'm going to pick user. And then okay. I think we're working now. There we go. So new entry requires your input. So I'm going to switch back to Marty. Yeah, you can have like the note that was inputted in that field be sent to the user. Okay. So now I go into my, when I go into my workflow inbox, I can see that I need to change this. And it's, you can, down here in the timeline, I can see Nick's note was, please change. So just one ton. Okay, so now that I submitted it, it should be back in Nick's court. I'll switch. So much switching. So go to the inbox. And this time I'm going to approve it. So I'm going to say, great. Okay, so now I can see at this, it's now stuck at that stopgap, but normally it would be complete at this point. And if I go into my snacks, I can see I have a Doritos post for 1 ton of Doritos. And let's see, so that custom step I have in, let's see. The one where it creates the information that was submitted, it creates it as a post. So what they do in this functionality plugin I've got here, how easy is that? Is that readable? I'm just setting up that snacks post type, and here I've got the gravity flow step. And so what you do here is, well, first of all, here's a link to the gravity flow documentation, but they basically just give you like a generic boilerplate step and then you give it a custom step type. You give it a label, so this is what you're going to see on the when you're creating your workflow steps. This is what's going to show up on the icon. Then process. This is what it does. So we're grabbing the entry during the workflow and putting it into this entry variable. And then we're taking that information, we're running WP insert post to create that post, and inserting our values in here. So I'm taking what was in field 1, stick it in the title, and then the type and quantity. I'm sticking those into post meta fields. So if you want to, the XDebug, these guys are going to show you after this is probably going to be helpful here. But if you want to see what's in your form when it's being submitted, when you're making this, you can just do a var dump of the entry and then die. And what happens is when it gets to that step, it's just going to dump to your screen, and you're going to see all the data and where it is in the entry. Let's see. But I don't know. That's the gist of it. Does any of you guys have any questions or anything? Oh yeah, it's just a lot easier to troubleshoot that way. So there's all these notifications getting fired off, and it's like if some of them are in your form, some of them are in the workflow. It's to me, it's just easier. What's that? Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So, but here, there's one caveat is if you're going to get any sort of user feedback or you want some sort of feedback loop in there, the submitter needs to be a user. So you're going to, I mean, which isn't too hard to do. Like you'll just have like a user registration form or something like that. But yeah, as a matter of fact, yeah, so you can set a couple different pages. So you can set an inbox page, status page, which is whether or not a form is currently assigned to you. You can see where it's at in the process, and submit. If you like, I didn't have to like take this Gravity form and embed it in a page. You could just have like a bunch of different forms that are available for users of the site to just go to and start their own workflow. Let's see. So here's those same 3 pages. Nothing in my inbox. This could probably be styled better, but here's the snack request form. If I click on that, I get the same deal. Yep. Yeah, he would get it. It would just then be assigned to him. He could, yeah.
Yeah, maybe if you set a budget, you've reached the limit.
So. For no, I mean they've got a couple that are. So they've got some that are free, and that's just basically PayPal, like if you're going to collect a payment or something like that, and an incoming webhook. So if you, I don't know, maybe you wanted to start a workflow like after a certain HTTP request is received or something like that.
But you could use the post stat to talk to the person.
Like the outgoing webhook,
Yeah.
I think that's probably what you'd use. You'd just like fire off a HTTP request to send your Twilio text message or something like that. So I haven't messed with all. I've played with a couple of these, but not all of them. So I can't really. No, these 6 deals, they're all paid. Yeah. So this parent-child forms one is kind of cool. What that allows you to do, like, say you have a form, and depending on what fields a user checked off, you could send out a notification that has links to other forms for them to fill out. But you can, in that notification, you can pass along a parameter so that they can, after they fill out those other forms, they're still associated with the parent form. So you could look into their request and see that, okay, they filled out the main form, and they also filled out these other subsequent forms, and I can, from the same screen, I can click on that and view. So I don't know, just kind of keeps them all grouped together. And the vacation request, it's similar to our snack request, but that's it's basically like request for time off, and then it goes into a feedback loop where it's like, no, you can't take this day off. Pick a different day and do that. So PDF generator, generate a PDF at any step in the process. So I don't know. This one I've never used, yeah. Okay, so I'm guessing this in that, in the submit page section, I'm guessing that this gives you folders within there. So if you were, yeah. Separately. Yep. No. which is kind of rough, yeah.
How did we find out specifically?
Yeah, well, we have a couple clients that we're using this for, and oddly enough, they're travel agencies, and so or student travel agencies, like or exchange student program type deals, where they'll fill out a main application, and then they're going to need to collect all sorts of different information from them, and based on how they filled out some of their forms, there might be more forms, and
Did any of those wind up? Was that a recommendation from us, I guess?
yeah. I don't know. I don't know how did we originally end up with Gravity Flow? Like, I know. Yep. Gotcha. So, let's see. That I don't know. So, any other questions? Or, it's $97 for a single site, and there's a couple different tiers, and I think they don't have like an unlimited license. The biggest package you could get is like 26 to 50 sites, and that's like $397, something like that.
So if you were to do this, and then you have to want to include the cost of grad as one, like let's say I'm doing a separate
Yep.
one, grad is one set aside, $99, $200 to do this for one person.
Yes. They're yeah.
Yeah.
Or actually, I think it's like the. Oh, let me go back here. So not quite the full, but you're pretty close at that point. Yeah. 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 So, but I just within the last year is when I heard about it, and the documentation on the site is pretty good. They do go kind of into depth, and I don't know. To me, that custom step is really where the power is. You can make it do pretty much anything you want. Anybody else? Okay. Thanks. So let's see.
So next up we have Eric, Celeste. Is that how you say the name? And Alex. I'm super excited to have you guys talk. I don't know. Have you been to WordPress meetup? What's that?
This is our third meeting.
Third meetup. Awesome. I love seeing new faces up here. I see lots of new faces out here too. We would love to have you guys come up and talk about anything and everything that you're excited about that's going on with whatever projects you're working on in WordPress. I don't know if you know, we actually have like a blog post that had a list of topics that I think we did at the end of 2016. And if anybody is interested in revisiting that, I think I posted it recently in the mailing list. If you're not part of the mailing list, you should go to mspwp.com, and it's right on the front page. It says Google Groups. Click on that. Subscribe to your email. Lots of helpful stuff. My boss, Nick Siski, has kind of made a name for himself on answering any and all technical questions that are asked on the mailing list. So it can be a useful source for free advice or free technical assistance on whatever you're doing. Anyway, check that out. I would love to hear from more people. We are going to have our meetup here again in March at this very location. So, no? Oh, okay. We'll be back in April. Anyway, here are Eric and Alex.
All right, and did I hear right that Simbura's name is changing?
Yes.
Wow. Well, I want to just say thank you to Simbura, because we've had a number of meetups, not only the WordPress meetup here, Lumen Fire to be, and it's just a wonderful place to meet. So thanks for sharing that with us. This is our third meeting, and furthermore, what we're showing you today is almost all stuff we haven't seen ourselves until a week ago Monday. But we got so excited about it, we just wanted to share it. I can't really see you very well, but I wanted to ask a couple of questions. Alex and I have been building websites with WordPress since about 2006, and I put up my first website in 1993 on a Next machine. So we've been doing this for a while, but I was wondering, of the folks out there, how many people actually code WordPress, so work on themes or plugins or things like that? Okay, so there's a decent number of you out there. And of that, of the folks who build sites with WordPress, how many of you try to have a local version on your machine to play with so you can screw things up to your heart's content, right? So that's what we do too. And it's very nice to have something that we can just blow up, and especially when we've got a new client site we're not familiar with, make a copy of that site and just screw around with it until we understand it. And we've been doing that. I tell you, we're going to check out local, because that looked pretty cool, and we didn't know about that until tonight. But we've been doing that with VirtualBox and putting up virtual machines a lot. And last week, we were listening to a podcast where we heard someone say, you're using VirtualBox, you should check out Docker. And then they went on with the rest of their podcast, said no more. And we thought, that's interesting, I wonder what Docker is, and went to look at it. So what we wanted to do today was show you Docker, and in the process of this week, we picked up a couple of other new tools, one of which is Visual Studio Code from Microsoft. Visual Studio Code, I don't even know the name yet, from Microsoft, and we'll show you that. It's like, a dozen other editors out there, but it is cross-platform, so whether you're Mac or PC, you can use it, and you'll get a glimpse of that here. And the other is XDebug, and that's the other question I wanted to ask. How many of you have used XDebug? So that's a smaller number of hands. It's a little harder to do because you need full control of your server to be able to really install it and use it. And so one of the big benefits of this method for us was being able to bring up XDebug and start playing with it. So we are not Okay. All right.
So,
Yep. Oh, and everything we're showing you is on. We're going to put this up on the mailing list so that all the instructions are going to be on the mailing list. Our own cheat sheet is what we're going to put up for you. Not that we'll need to read it. We've done this. So go ahead.
Whoever
doesn't have a lap can have that one. Oh, yeah. You can put it in the stand if you want for the time being.
Okay. Yeah. Kind of thing. Because there's this silliness in the. Might as well just show that. Yeah, I was actually just trying to figure out where the mouse is because it's so small.
Yeah, our screen got it's like looking at ants on
Yeah. And yeah, now I'm confused about that. Okay. So one of the coolest things for us about Docker when we figured it out was that really all of the files are directly on the Mac in the end. Yeah. So actually, the first thing I should do is so you install Docker basically on Docker. You can get started, we have the full URL in this thing, but it's somewhere like Docker for Mac is really what you, yeah, well, I have it, so never mind. But I already have it running, so I'm not going to bother with that. But anyway, so as I was saying, one of the cool things about Docker is that the files are directly on the Mac. So to show this, I'm just going to create a folder, demo. Slip around. Inside that folder, I'll put an HTML folder. We'll get back to that a little later. The way Docker Docker uses a configuration YAML file to construct. Can you see that? Yeah.
Not in BB Edit.
No.
It's very hard to see our menus.
Yeah.
You?
Just zoom in. Yeah, that's what.
Yeah. It's also lost everything green is blue on our screen. So.
Yeah. That's really.
Oh, you know what? I don't know if you want to unplug and replug. This happens sometimes. The plug isn't all the way in. You'll get that.
That's even worse.
Try it once more.
Try it from this side. Yeah, from the side that's not the USB-C.
Yeah.
There it is. That's better. Okay. So.
What you can't see on the menu bar that's kind of important is that when Docker is running, it's running in that menu bar. All that you'll see is a little menu item.
And if you click it, yeah, it's a cute little wow, I would say, actually. So anyway, each Docker container, each website, essentially, that you create is we're using it, you define JSON YAML files. And for WordPress, there's essentially two pieces. The first is the database, which, is basically just, MySQL, and we'd never on a live site use just WordPress for the username and everything, but this isn't at all web connected, so that's fine. And then there's the WordPress piece itself, and that you notice that the image that's using is WordPress latest, is actually the real latest WordPress image, is what software is what it will use. And to make life easier, I'll actually put this one on port 80, which is a normal web port. The other thing that's good to notice about the WordPress one is that it is this HTML folder that I created over here is being set as the root for the web files for the server itself. So, and then there's a few other things like, WordPress database config and things. Don't know. That, or to do, no. Command plus. Yes, good. Okay. Command T is create a tab. Given Apple has tabs, so if you want to. So to run the Docker, you go to its folder, which in this case is the demo folder, And then all you have to say is Docker compose up, and we'll put -d in here, which is to detach it, our prompt from it so that we get a command prompt
It'll
back.
just run in the background and give us another command.
Yeah. The first, okay. That's,
Oh, yeah, just change, let's change that. We must have, do we have, do a Docker PS?
Yeah, I
or
will.
something wrong?
did you leave something up? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, take it down.
Okay, yeah, sure.
So we had,
Docker
earlier today, we were.
Docker test. Yeah, okay. Docker
Although,
first. Yeah. And of course, this computer doesn't have all of that, of course.
so what Alex just did is he went
Yeah.
to the other folder where he's telling that one to come down.
Yeah,
But let's
so-
also just change the port in case we're doing that.
The internal part for the.
No, 3999. Change that to 3998.
I just changed that to the 330.
That's fine.
Yeah. That matches on the other one anyway. Which
You can
is internal.
tell we're going to bring up containers that are their own
Like that.
Unix machines essentially, and we're basically in that we're telling
demo.
it, take port 3306 and on my Mac make it this other port. Or as Alex just did, he's making them both the same.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Which is actually what I do on my normal computer anyway, usually, just to make life easier. And also on this computer, usually the first time you run one of these, it takes a while to download stuff, but again, we were testing earlier this evening, so it had all of the WordPress files already in the Docker system.
I did not have them in your folder. That you
No.
right?
But yeah, but the cool thing about this is it did not. Is there any way to zoom that? Is that easy? But it did not. Yeah, but it didn't have them in the folder. Now that HTML folder, you see all the normal WordPress files, which it's still putting in there. Actually, it's not even done with that yet. So to go to it, all you need to do with the fact that we set it up, not that, is just to, well,
Although, it's still set.
yeah, so this might, you
It
better
can
write
take
it
a
down.
couple minutes to copy all those files. As you see,
Yeah,
the
The-
system is still putting WordPress in place. There.
yeah, so it might take a little longer.
So it's not going to start the server until I have all the files.
Well, the server is running, but yeah, I mean, I think it's not, yeah, but it's not actually.
There.
But now it is. But it's still not, but does it just
Don't
not
worry about
create first? That's interesting. But yeah, so this is just a normal install. Must be, yeah. I'll just do that. Let's see. Tenseg, which is our company, and MSP WordPress. This is, yes, that's a crap password. Never, of course, use crappy passwords here, but you know, it's no one's going to see this, and I'll get rid of it tonight.
Well,
so.
you're all seeing.
Yeah, but no one, I mean, this isn't
Okay.
accessible to the web, so no one can actually mess with it. I guess I should avoid that. Yeah, anyway, so that doesn't really matter. So this is just, you know, we've all been through this however many times, installing WordPress.
And I want to point out, this is running on a MacBook Adorable, you know, so not the speediest Apple machine.
And we brought that, so being able to run in two of them, which this can do. I mean, you can run as many. So here's WordPress as the, well, except, yeah. See, this is the problem that I have with it. Like, I need to, when it's in that size, you actually need to,
Well,
there's no,
drag it bigger.
yeah. Yeah,
Make
no.
the window bigger.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm just, yeah. Just as you see, this is just the normal WordPress everything. To prove that that you can just do whatever you want with your files, I'm going to just create a super super simple PHP script. WP. If I can see it easily. That's just basically says prints one line and then prints PHP info, which is probably what the simplest script that you can do in PHP. And if I can see where this is. And I'll just drop that in the HTML folder as info.php. And then if you go, you can see that you can go to info. Yeah. Thanks. .php. And there's the file we just created. Right within Finder, where all of the files you can use like other files on the Mac. And you already saw this technically, but to bring it down, you just do Docker compose down, which leaves, let's get this back together. So the server is not there. Docker compose up, that's this would be much more instantaneous than it was before. Now it is back again. And that's essentially a basic, running a WordPress site locally with Docker. For the next piece, I'll let Eric.
Okay, so just to reiterate, you download Docker, you create a folder on your machine, you put a Docker, the Docker YAML file that Alex showed you, a Docker Compose YAML file there, into it with whatever you want in that Docker, and then you run Docker Compose up to bring it up. So it's a little geeky because it's all these text files you're configuring. That's why local looked interesting for people who don't like fiddling with text files. But this is pretty easy, even so. So let me pause there for a moment and see if there are questions about that part of it before I go on to Visual Code and XDebug. Yes?
Where did you get most of your documentation for this is kind of like the brains of the...
Well, for one thing, we're going to give it to you so that you'll have at least what we show you here. You'll get in the email list. So join the mailing list so that you get a copy. For another thing, that website that you can probably just do a Google search for Docker Compose, but it's not.
Well, and the documentation actually, for the real documentation for Docker, which we have a link to where you can download that, so like you're getting started, that have like applications, and there is one for WordPress, and that's all really done. But now, there's been a week or so of playing around and
See that
yeah, that's
bloody thing. Right. I mean, the documentation is spectacular, but Docker is actually written for people run production sites off of Docker on other sort of cloud services. Docker scales from what you're seeing here on a lowly Mac Adorable to huge sites on cloud. So the documentation can be kind of intense. Basically, though, it's as simple as find the right YAML and put it in the folder and start up. You're not having to install WordPress. You're not having to figure out how to get MySQL configured. All of this, you'll notice, is running in a user account. You don't need to be an admin on your Mac. It doesn't put files anywhere in admin. It doesn't leave any cruft in your Mac or your PC. Docker is cross-platform, so you can do this on a PC. You can do this in Linux. And it basically helps you, have a playpen to make that mess, right? You were going to say?
I was just going to find out that it actually does need to improve it. It's not like one piece of it, and then that still needs it, and then it puts in all of the symbols for the command.
Right. So it has a little bit, when you first do the install, it'll ask for your admin password so it can symlink a few commands and do one little thing they're trying to get rid of. I think on other platforms it doesn't even need that. But in any case, the documentation is there at Docker if you want it. And there's a great community around Docker we've discovered. Other questions at this stage before we go on? Okay, so what I'm going to do now is show you Visual Studio code from Microsoft. And it's basically an editor, you know, like we just saw Atom. I think Marty was using Atom. It's an editor like almost any other. And what I'm going to do to bring it up is just grab the folder that Alex created, our demo folder. Oh, good point, Alex. Let's show where to download that. So that's just at can't see anything. visualstudio.com. So this is also cross-platform, obviously, because we're on a Mac and it's a Microsoft product, and it may or may not come up. There we go. So you just download it and run it. So in any case, Visual Studio Code. There we go. That's it. Visual Studio is a whole development environment. It's huge and lots of pieces to it. You don't need any of that, just code, which is basically an editor. Okay, some of you may use Sublime Text or Atom, or we use Coda a lot in the week before last. So in any case, so I'm going to just take this demo folder, and if I can drag on this machine, which is always, yeah, there we go. So I'm going to drop it on the Visual Studio Code icon, and basically it brings up an editing environment where, let's make that a little bigger for you. At least that they make easy. So here's our demo folder with the Docker Compose that Alex was showing you right here. Right, the same file and the same HTML directory with all the WordPress files. To show that we're in the same place, let's just make a quick edit. I always like doing things like this as a sanity check. I'll save. We'll go back here and reload that guy. And yep, here we are. Oh, except I can't spell anything. So anyway, so we're in the same place, and that's right. So the question is, how do we go? Right now, we let's do something interesting, more interesting than doing. Let's make it even more wrong, right? We'll leave out a semicolon. Well, that's helpful. So it tells us where it is. There are other kinds of errors like warnings that are that you don't see when you're just running this way. But XDebug gives a much better view of what's going on your server. It gets in the way of things, like if something goes wrong, it puts up big error messages, very loud and orange, and so you don't see it on production servers. You don't want near your production server. But on a machine like this, it would be interesting to have XDebug. And so what we're going to do is change our YAML, this Docker Compose file, so that instead of just running WordPress latest, it's going to install a copy of WordPress that has the XDebug installed as well. So I'm going to show you a couple of things to get this done. One is, let's get an integrated terminal. So we can have a command line prompt right here in Visual Studio. And since we're in, it knows that we're in the directory that we started up in. That's where it's, what it thinks of as its working directory. All we have to do is say Docker Compose down to bring down the Docker that Alex had started up, right? So at that point, this site is gone entirely, right? There's no server there. And now we're going to make a little change to this configuration file so that it can bring up XDebug. So that took a little, what's that change? It's back to the question you asked, where do you find these things, right? So I hunted around a bit. What you're seeing here is a pre-built, is an image that someone else set up for WordPress. I mean, there are tons of images, including images that have XDebug in them, that you can go out and find at hub.docker.com. But what I wanted to show you was a little bit more of the insides for a moment, which is let's create a build for ourselves. And we've got a copy of one over in, there's a copy, where? Okay, I'm not seeing Docker Word. Oh, there we go. Well, I'll just take this Docker file. If I can three-finger drag, and then I get lost in my three-finger dragging. There's that. I want it in my, oh my God. Okay. Dragging is one of the hardest things on this adorable Mac. Okay. So now I put it in the same demo folder, and in fact, you'll see already, there it is. Visual Studio just stays in sync with the file system. So here's this file, and I wanted to just show you what this file does. It basically says start from WordPress latest, okay? And then run these commands, basically. You're telling the system, once it comes up, run these commands to get this system built. And this is a bunch of installation commands for XDebug. Okay? That's all this is. And then it should be set up. So what we need to do is tell the Docker Compose to use our Docker file. Since it's in the very same folder here, all we'll do is change the image to a build, because it's going to build from our thing. And we're going to make this a period because it's the same directory. The file could be anywhere. And then we'll save that. And now we'll bring up the Docker Compose. Up-P. Now we'll bring those up again. Well, sorry. Yeah, I did P instead of D. What? Oh. Alex reminded me of something else important. There are a couple, we want not only to make the system build a system with XDebug in it, but we need a little bit of configuration here. And so that is, where's the, open recent. This is our handout. I'm just going to go and copy this out of our handout. Studio, there we go. So I'm going to add one configuration to see these little configuration environment variables? We're going to add another one. It needs to be our IP address right here so that XDebug knows who to talk to. And the easiest way to find that is to go to here and pick up the IP address that we got when we got on the Wi-Fi here and paste it in. So now we have saved this file. Thank you, Alex, for saving me from that mistake. And we will just bring up the containers. Bring up the containers isn't this, right? So you're going to see that it's going to do a little bit more this time. It went by pretty fast. It did this work in the containers to basically configure PHP to be running XDebug. So now the containers are up again. If I find Safari and reload this, notice that error looks a little different now. So this is XDebug. And now the question is, how do you connect XDebug to an editor? Because while it's neat to have this over here, it's much more useful if this is integrated in your editing environment. So we've got our HTML directory and our info PHP with our mistake in it still, 2 mistakes. How do we connect this up? That is a matter of going to the debugger and adding a configuration for PHP. Now, let me say something else about Visual Studio. It has 1,000 plugins, literally like 1,000 extensions of every sort. So if you want to add extensions, you can add them to your heart's content. It does not come with PHP debug extension installed by default, but if you just search for XDebug, you'll find it. and then you just click on the little install button it shows you. You can find lots of other things for Visual Studio. So this little box is the extensions. We've already installed the extension for XDebug, which is called PHP Debug in Visual Studio. And so now I'm going to go to the debugger and tell it that I want a new, it says there are no configurations. If I try to start it, it'll ask me, what do you want to start up? And I'm going to say, well, I want to debug PHP. So there's one more piece of information we need. It gives you a generic configuration for XDebug, but we want to add one more thing from our file here. We need to make sure that Visual Studio knows how to connect to the place we are in this folder, how to make the association between our HTML folder and the HTML folder on that server. So we're adding 2 lines here. One says that our local root for the web server, compared to where this project is in Visual Studio Code, please add an HTML/HTML. And then we're saying on your remote host, which is the container, that same HTML folder is referred to as var/var/www/html. So that's the one thing we have to do to associate the two. And now we cross our fingers and see if we can actually debug code, which we didn't have any typos. Wait, no. Yeah. Start the debugger. Did it? Oh, there it is. So now it does a couple of things when you start the debugger. It puts up a little panel, and it puts up the bottom turns red. And now in theory, if there's a mistake, we should come back to that in the Visual Studio Code. Okay, I'm going to show you something else because I probably made a typo in there. What I'm going to do is just close up this guy and start up that other demo. So this is going to show you, here's the other folder. I'm going to bring this into, and then just open up this one with, because I want to, try not to swear. Alex really wants me to use 3-finger dragging, but I can't drag that far with 3 fingers. Then I force touch by accident. There we go. So now I've opened up this other folder with an HTML, and we're going to change this Docker YAML. That's actually a reference to the same Docker file you just saw, but this number is wrong. So system preferences, copy, paste, okay, save. And this one is on different ports, so that's good. Let's see if we can actually run it. Docker, compose up -d. So now we're starting a whole second set of WordPress and database on the same little MacBook. So now there should be another website over on port 8999, I think it was. Let's see if there's a website over there. Ah, there's a website. Yay. Okay. Let's see if we've got this one configured so that HTML. Well, we'll just go. We should be able to stop it at the index file. Let's just see. So I've just put what's called a breakpoint here. I put a little red dot that says stop here when you're running. I'm going to start up the debugger. Now reload. And there we are. We've stopped in the middle of WordPress. So notice the browser is stuck with a little bit of a blue line, and we're here in our source code with a little pointer at this line of source code. So I'm going to just let it finish. That's kind of boring right there. So now it's finished loading over there. I'm going to get rid of that breakpoint. One of the common problems I have when I'm getting familiar with a new WordPress site is, how do I get rid of it? There, drag it away. Is that I don't know sort of where I am in the site when a page loads. I don't know which template is in control. How many of you have had that problem? You know? So we're running 2017. Jeez, it's been a while. So one of the techniques for maybe figuring that out is like virtually every template page is going to run the header, right? So somewhere in here, it's going to run the header. And let's put a breakpoint in one of the PHP lines. So I'll say there, where it's about to do a get template. Oh, I should stop this guy and then start him up again. So now I've put a new breakpoint in. I'm starting up the debugger again. I'm loading the page again. And now I'm stopped here. Now this is a more interesting place to stop because you can see a whole bunch of variables here that are on the page. You're seeing these live, right? One of them is, for example, the post variable. It should be there. So it's a WordPress post, right? I can see what's in it. I could see what the title of this post is. Post title, right? Now that's not too surprising. The post title is Hello World because the page down here is called Hello World, right? So you can imagine how using these variables, you can even watch certain variables, you can set breakpoints at different places, you can look for even warnings, not just errors. You can imagine how useful this is not to have to put, you know, echo this and echo that all over the site in order to debug things, right? But what's even more fascinating is I didn't really expect this to work, but I can say post title equals hi MSP WP. I can make an assignment here, okay? And then when I finish running the page, remember this isn't, it's still stuck at this line of code, the yellow line of code, right? When I let it finish running the page, what's it actually going to say down here, right? So I'm going to let it finish. And look at, let it finish. Look at what it said down there, right? And when you run the page this way, you can also do things like take step by step your code and watch it. You know what's happening at each step. You can jump into things, so you can trace yourself all the way back to into the WordPress core if you need to. And I love this. This is really useful. This is the callback stack. What files? How did I get to template.php? Right? And this is where it's really useful because I can say, oh, I started out at index.php. And what line of index.php was I on to get here? It was the get header line sent me here. And then it sent me to this template file here, and then to this one here, and then to header. So you can actually look at how you got there. So when you're building sites or trying to figure out how someone else built a theme, this can be really, really handy. So we've been using this a lot the last week and a half. It didn't take too much trouble to set up. I encourage you to give it a try. And I'm really curious to know how much of this you can do with that local by, what was that again? So local by flywheel, because that looks like it might be even easier to set up and get going. One of the things we love about this are that the files are in the, are on your local machine, are just in Finder. You can use any tool to edit them. As you've seen, all those changes are live then on the site you're doing. You don't need to do SSH or FTP or things. They're all right here. You can use SQL Pro or other tools to connect right up to the database and futz around with the database. That's really easy too. And it doesn't leave any cruft on your Mac aside from the files you want it to leave. It wouldn't even have to make these visible in Finder, except we asked it to do that. So that's basically a little bit of a glimpse at Docker, Visual Studio Code, and XDebug. And I'm happy to try to answer questions for any of you. Anything? It was Manton Reese and Daniel Jalkut on their Core Intuition podcast. If you're a Mac developer, it's a great podcast because they're both, or an iOS developer, they're both Mac and iOS developers, and Manton's bringing up something really cool soon, a sort of open alternative to Twitter. So in any case, they mentioned it on their podcast. Yes? Well,
No, that was funny. I've had, when I first started experimenting with this, there's two things there. There's going to be the files that are visible in Finder, which really, like, for this site, is not even 30 megabytes. And then there's the actual virtual machine storage that Docker for the Mac leaves around. And that was not even, I don't even think that was like 3 or 4 gigabytes when I started. It's now grown because I've done efforts of experimenting. But it's not that much. By comparison, I have on my Mac 30 gigabytes worth of storage that are in the sort of VirtualBox machines that I've used in the past, just because those all need the free space for the servers too. What's awesome about Docker is it's really the same storage. So your WordPress site will take up space over time, but that's exactly the same storage that your Mac has anyway.
And the other thing about Docker is it's very layered. That's why they call it Docker. In the picture of in the menu bar, you can't see it's a whale with little boxes on top. So both the WordPress container and the MySQL container are running on top of Ubuntu, Unix. And we have now 2 copies of both of those running on this little Mac. So there are 4 containers running here. And they're all really sharing the same kernel. In fact, they're all sharing the Mac's kernel with hypervisor. So it doesn't need any of that overhead, which VirtualBox sort of spins up a whole new virtualized machine. So it's actually much, much more efficient than VirtualBox, much easier to set up, and takes up vastly less room. And this was kind of cool. Let's see if this works for you. We've done things like this, where you just put the machine to sleep, right? And it goes away, or log it out, or shut it down, and then come back to the machine. And let's see if, oh, we're still debugging. Let's stop that. And there we are. It's still running. It just reloaded. So it's actually very well behaved in the Mac environment, and really easy to deal with. I found Visual Studio Code to be a bit more of a hog, and a bit more problematic as a Mac user. It's a little heavy and a little awkward in its editing, assumptions. But Docker's been terrific. Other questions? Yeah. I would be shocked if in a year Flywheel isn't using Docker in the background, because I think this is so much more. Docker wasn't really available, I think, on the Mac this easily until a few months ago. And so they couldn't really do it multi-platform the same way. But now that it's there, as users of both VirtualBox and Docker, unless I really need that whole virtualized environment for some reason, there's just no reason I would do that. Docker has these awesome things, like when we're uploading and downloading databases, you want to make a backup of your database. Let's make a backup of the WordPress database here for a second. Here, can you hold that? Is that in our document here? So I'll just copy the command so that we can run the command line. So you can run a single line command to back up the database from the Docker. I'll have to edit it slightly. So this command, I'm going to go back to my little terminal here. Now my terminal is in this doc, Okay, it's called Docker test this doc. If I paste this in, I'm going to go back and edit. See where it says MSPWP _ DB1? I happen to know the name of this container because I'm here in the Docker test folder as Docker test _ DB1. And I'm telling Docker to execute, I'm saying, Docker, please execute a command for me in this container. And that command should be a MySQL dump and put the results in backup.sql. It warned me that, hey, idiot, don't put your password on the command line. But if I look at the files that I've got in this doc now, there's my backup. So you can interact directly with the tools there without even logging into the Docker. You can also log into it. You could as easily create a shell inside the container. And we do this now, it's that easy, so we will just drop down to the command line, hit up arrow, run another backup. It's as easy as clicking here, up arrowing to the command, hitting that. Now you got another backup of your database in its current state. If you want to load it back in, it's just as easy a command to load it back in. Right, we've got that one in our tip sheet too that we're giving you. So another command will just load it right back in. So you can sort of make copies of different states, try something out and say, that didn't work. Go right back to where you were. It takes 2 seconds, right? So it's just really, really nice tool for that kind of thing. All right, thank you.